Mother Moore.
This is so much fun. My children, I'm here today to identify myself and rededicate myself in the spirit of Marcus Garvey and with our beloved brothers who are incarcerated here behind these infernal walls. To me, the struggle in behalf of our men who find themselves recaptured under recaptivity. I say re because those of us who are not behind these walls are captured, and then to capture on top of that makes it doubly so. But the struggle is not a new one, because I have been fighting all my life against this super oppression of our people. Marcus Garvey taught us what they had robbed from us. And to speak in terms of robbery, I want our young brothers here who has been incarcerated here for perhaps in a small, very small way, taking back that which was taken from us, because you couldn't steal, brothers. You can't steal. You can't steal from a white man. All you can do is take back from him. Everything that he's got, everything the white man has, everything he stole it from you. Everything he stole from you. You're not the criminals. You're not the criminals. I'd like to ask you, have you stolen anybody's heritage? Have you stolen children from their mothers and sold them on the slave block? Have you stolen wealth from the lands? And have you stolen whole countries? I want to show you, you haven't been stealing. You haven't been stealing.
Greetings, good afternoon, good evening. How's everybody doing? My name is Tonda Sizwe Shimaringa, and I am the host of Root Work. It's important, root, not root, Root Work, here on Black Liberation Media. I'm trying to see if I can get to a couple of y'all comments real quick. I appreciate y'all checking in. Oh, look at that. It's Zinzabel telling on herself. Says she made it on time and everything. All right. You ain't always got to tell everything. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Tonda Sizwe Shimmeringa and Root Work here on Black Liberation Media. Thank you for hanging out with us, with me this afternoon. Please don't forget, like I always say, don't forget, like, share, and subscribe. Like it now before you hear something that you don't like, so we can get it out the way. Share the link. Make sure that you are subscribed to Black Liberation Media, and make sure you are subscribed to Root Work here on YouTube. I'm, I had this show planned, and by the way, this is not live. I'm live right now. Hi, hey, but I had to pre-record Dr. Ashley Farmer, so she won't be able to answer any of your questions directly. I can get them to her later if need be. But I'm in a weird place right now because I was doing a show yesterday with Rosa Clemente, and it was at that point that I found out that Imam Jamil Alameen, formerly known as H. Rap Brown, had made his transition. And I have just been really messed up and bothered for the last 24 to 48 hours, going on to, well, I guess two, I don't know. See, I don't even know. I've just been really bothered by that. And I was like, okay, but I said I was going to do this show. We need to talk about Imam Jamil. Fortunately, the crew on the morning show, the remix morning show, is going to be doing something, I believe, hopefully all week long. But yeah, I'm upset because he should not, he didn't have to, he did not deserve, he should not have died behind those concrete walls. We should have been able to bring him home. And I'm not really sure how many folks really understand why he is so important to the Black liberation movement, and not just as a quote unquote relic from the 60s. Oh, he was in SNCC and violence and cherry pie. You know, if I feel like getting up in the morning, I might hop on the remix show and vent a little bit. I'm not quite sure yet. Like I said, I've been messed up, so I don't really know. I don't know. But I don't want to take away from um I don't want to take away from Imam Jamil. I also don't want to take away from Queen Mother Moore. But it's like, well, you just heard, shout out Haki Kweli Shakur, New African History Network, for that video clip. You just heard her addressing a rally at Greenhaven Prison in the early 1970s. Queen Mother Moore knew what time it was. She knew about all of our struggles being interrelated. She understood the importance of political prisoners, as well as mass incarceration, and how it impacts and affects us as a nation of people anyway. So, yeah, I'm not trying to bring y'all energy down. I'm just trying to keep it a buck with y'all, keep it a buck. So, what I'm going to do, as opposed to sitting up here and mumbling my way through this, I am going to go to this interview with Ashley Farmer and then come back afterwards, and we'll see some of your comments. If I can answer a question, I probably can't, but we'll see what happens. All right, so y'all hang on for a second, and let's get into this goodness. All right. Ashley Farmer is an award-winning and internationally known writer, researcher, and cultural analyst who explores and reports on Black history and its implications today. Currently, Dr. Farmer is an associate professor in the Department of History, African and African Diaspora Studies at the University of Texas at Austin. Dr. Ashley Farmer, thank you so much for being on Rootwork today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Queen Mother Moore.
Yes.
As you, I'm sure, have found out in during your research, is a beloved figure. Is it beloved? It's both. It's beloved and beloved figure in the Black liberation movement.
Yes.
And now, for the first time, in one location, we have a biography of her life and her work, and which, as I'm sure you know, as a professor of history, it's not just of her, it's
Right.
of the time she lived in, it's
Mhm.
of the organizations and the movements that she was a part of.
Yes.
So before we get into this, let me just say real quick, thank you so much for doing this work.
Oh, thank you. It was a labor of love.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to take on this project of documenting Queen Mother Audrey Moore's life and work?
Yeah, so I'm a historian of Black women in radical politics. And so I've been researching them for the better part of 15 years, including writing my first book, which is called Remaking Black Power, How Black Women Transformed an Era. And
Right.
I interviewed a ton of activists for that book. And almost every one of them had a story about Queen Mother Moore. Queen Mother Moore introduced them to the concept of reparations. Queen Mother Moore was the first one to teach them about Marcus Garvey, which they didn't learn about in schools, right? Queen Mother Moore was the first to tell them about the liberation of Africa. And I was stunned when I went to go look online. We're talking, this is like 2008, 2009. Virtually nothing on her, save, a few recollections from folks in the activist community that really cared about her. And I soon figured out why. It was because a lot of her artifacts, a lot of her books, her papers, all that stuff has gone missing. We don't really know where all of that stuff is. And so as I was researching and writing other things, she just kept staying with me. I was like, how can somebody that's such a giant that lived from 1898 to 1997, almost 100 years, who was mentoring everybody from Malcolm X to Dr. Muhammad Ahmed to the Republic of New Africa, not have a work on her? So I spent, 8-9 years just gathering everything I could. I started making contact with her family. Her son is still alive and lives in Philadelphia, and he's got 3 wonderful granddaughters as well, and great-grandchildren of hers. And slowly I pieced it together. But I just felt like we could not understand how we got here, nor could we understand what our possibilities were for the future if we didn't have the life of Queen Mother Moore written down.
Okay. I appreciated the way you wrote the book. Again, you've talked elsewhere in interviews about the fact that it was virtually an archive of her life was virtually non-existent in terms of printed materials, books, essays, etc. Most of it, as you said, started with recollections from other activists. So I appreciated the way that you wrote the book in terms of, it seems like this is a project of reclamation and supplementation, imagining the things that might have occurred based on the historical record. Like maybe she went down here on a Saturday and perhaps her mother did this and perhaps her father did that. Because as a historian, trained in primary sources, you don't actually have with you the actual record or diary or what she said she did. In some cases, I do know she has an oral history, but in the other places I've heard before, a historian is like a detective. You're piecing together the story, and you took great pains to write the book, at least in the beginning part, in that manner, and I really appreciated that.
Thank you.
And one of the things that stood out for me, because I'm more familiar with Queen Mother, the reparations activist, revolutionary action movement, New African independence movement, etc., coming forward, wasn't that familiar with her upbringing. You wrote about how her parents, how she may have been observing her mother get ready for a date night with her father. And just that one piece took me back to watching my parents. When I was a child, they would go to, I'm out here in Los Angeles. We would get in the car and ride to Las Vegas. They would go play the slot machines, and I would be at Circus.
I love
They would
it.
drop me off with the kids. And of course, I hated the ride. Oh my God, are we there yet? And once I was old enough to take care of myself, the 2 of them would be like, bye, and they would get in the car
Love it. Yeah.
and leave me. And I was like, wow, date nights for parents and how that has an impression on a child, how her parents' life made that impression on her. Unfortunately, she lost her parents at such a young age. But the documenting of her Creole middle class, as she would call it, bourgeois life.
Yes.
That upbringing, that preparation for a bourgeois or middle class life, and then to have it snatched away. To say that she was thrown into the ranks of the working class or the lower working class. If it was a shock for me reading it, I know it was a shock for her living it.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up because many of the people, like I said, I talked to many people for the biography, and then as I've been traveling around on tour, lots of people that come did meet her, right? Some did work with her, but they knew her when she was 60, 70, 80, even in her
Mm-hmm.
90s, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, very few people knew her before, you know, say 1960 that are still around, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
so many people have said they were shocked to learn that, you know, her life was kind of going on a whole different course. She was being trained to be really part of the Black elite and even look down on some Black people that were lower from her or didn't have, you know, the same kinds of access to money and schooling. But as you say, that's all transformed when she loses both of her parents and is forced to all of a sudden go from having maids to being one. Um,
Mm-hmm.
being a domestic worker in white women's homes. And really, it's Marcus Garvey coming along that changes her life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The having to, like you said, to
Mhm,
go from having nursemaids and actual
mhm,
maids to
mhm,
now cleaning white people's houses.
mhm.
And again, essentially, she becomes a single mother
Right?
because she becomes the caretaker of her two younger sisters.
Yes, yes, Eloise and Loretta.
Such a stark, not even stark, such
Mm.
an abrupt
And abrupt.
end because of her two quote unquote half brothers
Yes.
who dogged her out. So this leads, I think maybe approximately 7 months after her father passes away,
Mhm, mhm,
or one of her sisters gets married first. And it's like this emphasis on courtship
mhm,
and finding a suitable quote unquote
mhm,
partner
mhm,
to either establish or rescue you
mhm.
from an impoverished background. I thought that that was a very interesting dynamic that was at play. The
Mm,
other thing that I thought was interesting but kind of troubling to me was the emphasis placed on physical characteristics
mhm, mhm.
in terms of quote unquote. Well, I'm not from Louisiana.
Yeah,
I, I there's a lot. There's a bunch of them out here in LA, but
that's right.
I'm
Yep,
not.
yep,
I'm not
yep,
quite
yep. Queen
sure.
Mother Moore went through there too, right? Uh-huh. Yeah,
We'll come to that. But
yeah, yeah,
so I'm not. I don't know how it works, but it just
yeah.
seemed like this Creole society fascination
Mhm.
with physical characteristics, which were as important which was as important as quote unquote wealth,
Yes,
which
yes.
added to stability. I don't understand. I don't understand it now. Definitely didn't understand
Yeah,
it at that
yeah,
time period.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Can
Yeah, I
you?
mean, it was a situation where, you know, the goal was to aspire towards whiteness, right?
Mm,
And as she says in I quote her in the book, you know, she said before Marcus Garvey came around, she wanted to be white, but she wanted to be rich white, you know? And that's her quote, not mine. But it shows you kind of what she was being primed to, or what she could have been exposed to, or what the aspiration was in that community. Even as they were also still taking care of each other, navigating and trying to fight for Black rights, practicing what we would now call mutual aid by, you know, helping each
mhm,
other out when they got sick, needed to bury their dead, educate. But it was a very complicated and different existence. I mean, one would never assume that somebody that grew up like that would end up becoming, you know, the Queen Mother Moore, the nationalist, the Pan Africanist, the reparationist that we know her as today.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, such a stark difference.
Mhm, mhm.
And then we come to the introduction of Marcus Garvey
Yes.
and the story that many of us are familiar with, that the story that Queen Mother tells,
Mhm,
that Garvey was they attempted to prevent him from
mhm.
speaking, and
Yep.
everyone in attendance showed up with their gats
Mhm,
saying, "Speak, Garvey, speak."
mhm.
You write that she had a 45 caliber. That's a big gun to have in your
That's
bosom.
what she said. That's
It
what
wasn't
she
no Derringer. It wasn't no 22 or
that I'm just
32.
quoting what she said, you know?
It wasn't no 38.
She said a 45
She had a
and
45 in her bosom.
and
A
another in her
45, that's a
pocketbook.
heavy gun to be toting around, as my grandmama
Mhm.
would say.
And then
But
she
yeah,
said that her
and she,
husband had a suitcase full of bullets too, next to her. Her first husband, you know, she got a couple.
well, Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, that whole marriage courtship thing was was
Hmm.
was 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 interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, the emphasis on not only interest into entrance into upper Creole society or upper
Mhm.
society or middle class bourgeois living, but also
Yes. Yeah.
self defense, and standing up to white folks,
Hmm. Hmm.
having no fear. That's
Hmm.
also something that she talks about
Yes.
as making a great impression on her.
Yes. Yes.
Not just her father, but her husband as well.
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that primed her to defend Black folks at all costs, and I mean that in all kinds of ways, is seeing her father. Even though he may have been a man that was aspiring to be in this kind of Creole society, he also had guns. He also was a constable, right? He also stood up to white men that disrespected her and disrespected his son, sometimes to the point of being run out of town. She
Mm,
saw the way her mother insisted on being treated like a lady, and with given the same deference as white women. And I think even though they ended up going in different routes in terms of what their vision of Black liberation was, those core values about
mm,
a sense of self, right, and a sense of fighting for one's beliefs was ingrained in her from a young age. Her family did not back down, and she learned.
mhm.
Hmm.
I'm sorry. Say again.
And from her first husband, I'm the one who
Hmm.
introduced her to Garveyism. Hmm.
Hmm. I'm speaking with Dr. Ashley Farmer, an award-winning and internationally known writer, researcher, and cultural analyst. Currently an associate professor in the Department of History, African Diaspora Studies at the University of Texas at Austin. We are talking about her newest book, Queen Mother, Black Nationalism, Reparations, and the Untold Story of Audrey Moore. Now, I was telling you before we started recording, I would love to keep you 24 hours, but I know I can't do that. So I'm going to try to rush through a
Yeah,
couple of things.
yeah.
Queen Mother Moore is introduced to the teachings of Marcus Garvey
Mhm,
through her first husband.
mhm.
And New Orleans is this center of not New York per se, but New Orleans is one of the strongest UNIA chapters
Absolutely. Mhm,
in the country at the time.
mhm,
And Queen Mother becomes an organizer, becomes a member.
mhm.
She's committed. She down with it. She 10 toes down, as we say.
She is.
She and her husband are ready to pack their bags and move to Africa, rematriate.
Yeah.
At a certain point, the Garvey movement is attacked and destroyed.
Mhm,
And again, looking at that background, that working class background, she comes from a bourgeois
mhm.
background, so she clearly knows what that life is like. She's
Absolutely.
been thrust into the working class, or in almost into abject poverty. She
Mhm.
knows what that's like. Enter the Communist Party.
Yes, yes, yes.
Enter the Communist Party. Not only their quote unquote talking point of
Mhm,
Black self determination and the
mhm.
self determination of the Black Belt, but they're communists. They're
Right.
talking about working men and women as
Mhm.
well as labor.
Yes.
Talk to us about that real quick.
Yeah, so Queen Mother Moore follows the folks of the Great Migration. She and her husband, her first husband, leave Louisiana. They go west. They don't find a lot of freedom. They go north to Chicago and eventually settle in Harlem, where many Black folks did, basically at the start of the Depression. And she's walking around every day, very looking for work, back to scrubbing white folks' homes. And she sees the Communist Party, or a group that she sees fighting for things like the Scottsboro Boys, the
Mhm.
African American youth that were accused of raping two white women on the train. And this is a case that, folks in the NAACP wouldn't touch, but she sees them galvanizing white and Black people for that. She sees
Mhm.
them taking people's furniture who've gotten evicted because they can't pay their rent in the Depression, and the landlords put it outside, and the Communist Party folks are putting it back inside. She sees them picketing places where they won't sell or employ Black folks. And so there is, if she's looking around for a place to join to make her life better, who is bettering Black people? In the 1930s, particularly in spaces like New York, Chicago, Detroit, the Communist Party is doing that work while also saying that Black folks are a nation within a nation, and that we're bound together by a shared oppression, heritage, language, culture, and we have the right to secede for the United States. And what she says is they've got their thing, they're talking about what Garvey's coughing about, right? She recognizes that, it rhymes with Garveyism. And she sees that they're helping everyday working class Black folks. She says, well, might be a good thing to help get my people started. But I want to be clear, she's a nationalist, but she sees the Communist Party as what she calls a vehicle, right? A way to kind of achieve her nationalist goals and help mitigate Black suffering. But she's cognizant of trying to keep her values straight in terms of what the Communist Party can offer her and what it can't.
Now, again, we can't spend a whole lot of time, but
yeah,
I'm gonna try and get to it.
yeah.
So the Communist Party, at some point, they abandon that line of thinking, or that political line or ideology that Black people are a nation and quote unquote in the fight for self-determination.
Yeah.
But she maintains her commitment to Black self-determination, to Black self-defense. And this is where you say she is the mother of the modern reparations movement. Why do you call her the mother of the modern day reparations movement? And when you say that, again, looking at your interviews elsewhere, you're talking about right now, today, 2025.
Yes.
Where we stand across the country, here in LA, state of California, Evansville, Illinois, other places. You're saying that is a direct result of Queen Mother Moore. Why and how do you say that?
Yeah. So, I just want to address the modern part. I don't want to erase or not pay homage to the folks who came before Queen Mother that were also advocating for repayment for labor during slavery. None more so than a woman from my hometown named Callie House, who was organizing for what she then called ex-slave pensions, right? This is right after the end of slavery, as payment for the work done there. But, that movement died out, in fact, because they captured Callie House the same way they captured Marcus Garvey, mail fraud, and a common occurrence. And it wasn't until Queen Mother Moore kind of revitalized this idea of repayment in the late 1950s and early 1960s that we get to this point where reparations is on our tongues today. So I want folks to imagine that she's back home in New Orleans. She's organizing with a group of fellow former Garveyites, and she is beginning to think about the idea of reparations in this little women's study group that she's in, along with her sisters. And then while everybody else is talking about integration and the March on Washington and sit-ins, she is driving from place to place talking about repayment in the form of a check, but also in form of apology, in the form of cultural institutions, in the form of jobs, to anybody will listen. And I'm talking about driving to a church here, a civic center there, a group of organizers here, right? And it catches on. She really is somebody that is kind of planting the seeds for a million flowers to bloom. In a place like Los Angeles, a group called Reparations Inc. develops, and they file a claim for repayment. In a place like San Francisco, they latch onto her ideas of nationalism. She thought that reparations should be used as the seed money to start a separate nation. But she worked with anybody, whether they agreed with that or not. So when I say she's the mother of the modern reparations movement, what I mean is that not only the idea of the reparations just being something we all know about now, like that term just wasn't on people's tongues before, but also the many different iterations that people are organizing for reparations now is a direct result of her grassroots organizing, right? And getting different groups to do that. So just to give one last example, Charles Ogletree, famous civil rights lawyer, who did legal cases, right, for reparations for victims of racial violence. He credits Queen Mother Moore with introducing him to the concept of reparations, right? So we see it in all of these different ways from all the people she influenced.
Well, real quick, I did want to touch on that because you described Queen Mother's impact as having the most generative and inventive reparations proposal. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So one of the things that Queen Mother Moore, again, she believed that we were owed back money or back pay for not just slavery, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's not just arguing about the labor, but she's also talking about, in this case, she's writing in the 1960s, so the 100 years since slavery, in which Black people have endured social, sexual, cultural, linguistic, all kinds of abuse and been severed from Africa. And
Mm-hmm.
in that, she offers, ways that we could make it right in terms of money. But throughout her life, she also offers different versions of what reparations means. She really thought the reparations was more than just a paycheck, though that was important.
Mm-hmm.
Thought it was about us reconnecting our severed ties with Africa. And you can do that certainly by starting a separate nation, but also by learning about your culture, right? By shedding your European values or your Westernized values, by
Mm-hmm.
supporting African-based religions and churches, right? So
Mm-hmm.
she thought that we had to do this, not just a paycheck and apology, as you will, but really a holistic apology and atonement for everything that had happened to us. And from that, it was generative because people picked up in all different parts of that and took on all different aspects of that. And we see that playing out today in reparations organizing.
Mm-hmm. A true effort at repairing
Mm-hmm.
the harm that
Mm-hmm.
Black people encountered.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I guess lastly,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask about the relationship. Is it the relationship? The influence and
Mm-hmm.
impact, as well as relationship, of Queen Mother Moore on modern Black liberation movement. Organizations such as the Revolutionary Action Movement.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, her conversations with Malcolm X,
Mm-hmm.
her influence on Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we look at the trajectory of after Malcolm is assassinated,
Mm-hmm.
the beginnings of quote unquote Black Power, the
Mm-hmm.
Black Panther Party, the Revolutionary Action Movement, which started before Malcolm's
Mm-hmm.
assassination, but now they become more visible.
Yes.
We moved into in the late 1960s and the beginnings of the Republic of New Africa,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm a member of the New African Independence Movement. She is revered for
Weird.
being the very first one to sign the Declaration of Independence of Black people saying we want to secede
Mm-hmm.
from the United States. And as part of that reparations payment
Mm-hmm.
would be that land of
Absolutely.
5 states. So even though I just ran my mouth, can you talk about Queen Mother's impact, influence, relationships with the more militant and radical Black liberation movement? Because again, we're talking about a woman in
Mm-hmm.
her 60s
Mm-hmm.
going into her 70s. Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. So Queen Mother Moore mentored the Revolutionary Action Movement and its foremost members in Philadelphia. And by that, I mean that she opened up her home to them, right? And her library to them. And they would people like Muhammad Ahmed would spend the night there, right? Reading and studying with her so that they got the kind of science, as she called it, of organizing. She had them reading texts by Garvey, texts by Harry Haywood, right? Texts by Claudia Jones, who, people that she also organized with, which is really astounding. And Marx, right? And then have them reading, Nkrumah and Nyerere, right? And so she is giving them a solid, political education. And one of the things that the activists always told me that they would say as she shoved a book into their chest for them to read, I want you to get this, but don't let it get you. Right. And by that, she meant, you need to understand what people have thought about and their analyses of the world, but make sure that you're not blindly just going into it, but use it to craft your own path. So she was instrumental there. She was instrumental with helping to broaden folks like Malcolm X's outlook. She was continually frustrated by his lack of interest. Well, what she didn't say lack of interest, lack of ability to speak about things like reparations and African liberation when he was part of the Nation of Islam. But when he would come by her house, also in Philadelphia, they would chat, and she saw this as she was kind of prepping him for eventually when he was ready to expand his mind beyond that. She mentored folks in the Black Panther Party, particularly in New York. And then, as you mentioned, was a foundational member of the Republic of New Africa, helping them think through that original conference in Detroit, helping them think through just the real nuts and bolts of what a Black nation looks like, right? And she served as a minister of culture, going from place to place, talking about and galvanizing folks in Republic of New Africa. So when you think about Black power, particularly the radical, kind of very radical aspects, the very nationalist aspects of Black power, you should see Queen Mother as kind of a centerpiece with spokes kind of, shifting off of different that were using her expertise to form, radical organizations.
And I'm glad that you mentioned the fact that she actually worked with Claudia Jones. I did want to ask about that, but I kept moving forward.
Yeah.
Let's go back for a second, because the last question I wanted to ask you about was Queen Mother Moore's presence in London. But before we go there, what were you able to uncover in terms of her relationship with Claudia Jones?
Yeah, so Claudia Jones is younger than her, but they end up becoming compatriots once they both enter in the Communist Party.
Right.
And in particular, I know most people think of a Communist Party as a white organization, but part of what drew Moore in particular is that in Harlem, there was a cabal, if you will, a group of really innovative, smart organizers: Paul Robeson, Shirley Graham Du Bois, Claudia Jones, Vicki Garvin, Louise Thompson Patterson, and they're all in the same chapter, right, of the Communist Party. So even if they're under this big C communist group, on the ground in Harlem, they're using the resources of the party to organize the Black working class there. And Claudia Jones, really also defended strongly Black people's right to self-determination and separation. And they found real common ground over that as they were organizing in Harlem. So, that moment of the 30s and 40s, there were a lot of our Black women intellectual and activist elders working together and doing good work on the ground there.
And we know that in the 50s, Claudia Jones becomes in the crosshairs, to use that cliche, of the House Un-American Activities Committee, the quote unquote Red Scare. She ends up being deported to London. Queen Mother Moore continues her trajectory, working with the Universal Association of Ethiopian Women, the mentoring many of the frontline workers of the more militant, radical Black liberation movement here. And then we see that Queen Mother Moore has a presence in London, England.
Yes.
After Claudia unfortunately passes away. But talk about Queen Mother Moore in England, if you can.
Sure. So many folk, if it's late 20th century England, particularly in London, and by now we've had kind of two generations of Black immigrants to England. The first, the Windrush generation, the group of folks that came directly after World War II on the ship called the Windrush to work and rebuild after the war. And then they've had children who they have tried to kind of integrate into British society to no avail. It's not going well, as you can imagine. I mean, British Empire, the original.
Who would have thunk?
Who would have thunk, right?
Who would have thunk it? Yeah.
And so just like you see here in America in the 60s and 70s, you see the youth in Britain really chafing against integration, chafing against, normalizing, the white experience, seeking nationalism and Black power in their own ways. And this is also spurred on by folks like Stokely Carmichael and Malcolm X also coming, and so eventually there's a group of organizers that follow the Rastafari tradition. And of course, this is in line with support of Ethiopia and support of Marcus Garvey in particular. And they come to see Queen Mother Moore as a figurehead and a guide in their movement because she's one of the few people left that is still knew Marcus Garvey directly and is invested in their teachings. So they invite her over to London, England a couple times to speak and organized, folks around nationalist ideas. And then eventually she gives them the idea that they need to start a museum, a physical cultural space where Black and African culture can be celebrated. And so she comes back to help with that again. And we still have that place today. It's called the Black Cultural Archive, the BCA. And it was from her visits to Britain and her inspiring folks to invest in their Black culture that center, which I think is the only center directed towards Black culture in London today.
But and it goes back to what you talked about earlier, the need for Black people to learn their true history, their true culture, those things that were taken from us,
Yeah.
or growth that we lost after the horrors of enslavement. It reminds me of this clip that is out there in the world. I wish I could find the entire clip where she's at. I believe it's the National Black Independent Political.
Well, the Gary Convention, the National
Convention. Black Political Convention.
Yep.
They're talking about the Black Political Convention, but there's a clip of Queen Mother Moore handing out leaflets to the people who are in attendance, talking about reparations, because that's what she would talk about. And then she says something about what was taken from us, how, quote unquote, again, our culture, what was lost. She said, I want to get an afro, but the white man done messed me all up.
Yes.
And I'm just like, what did she? That was
she
one
was
of my first
funny,
introductions.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. That was one of my first introductions, sir.
Yeah,
I can't even get my hair in an afro. The white man done messed me all up.
Yes.
The way she was talking about the white man. Queen Mother Moore was hilarious.
Yes, she was.
I've been speaking with Dr. Ashley Farmer, associate professor in the Department of History, African and African Diaspora Studies at the University of Texas at Austin, author of the newly released book, Queen Mother, Black Nationalism, Reparations, and the Untold Story of Audrey Moore. We have gone through this quickly. Again, I would love to keep you 24 hours. At some point, I'm going to be able to do that. Just sit at your feet and absorb everything. But I know you have to go. Everything that we were not able to get to today, it's in the book. This is, you said, how many years did you spend researching Queen Mother?
Over 10 years. Over 10 years.
Over 10. If you found her name mentioned, scribbled somewhere, put it in the archive.
Exactly.
A flyer with her name, put it in the archive. Interviews with people who know her, put it in the archive. I've seen 1 or 2 oral histories of Queen Mother Moore online. Goes in the archive.
Right.
Land deed and birth certificate, marriage certificate, all in the archive, all serving as background or as foundation to uphold this pillar of the Black liberation movement. Finally getting so much information about her life, about her work, about the world around her at that time, having all of this in one location at our fingertips. Queen Mother, Black Nationalism, Reparations, and the Untold Story of Audrey Moore. Thank you so much, Dr. Ashley D. Farmer, for this labor of love. Thank you so much for this work. And thank you so much for being on Rootwork today.
Thank you so much for having me and checking out the book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was the interview with Dr. Ashley Farmer talking about her newest book, Queen Mother, biography of Queen Mother Moore. For the first time, I think ever, where we have got so much information about Queen Mother Moore in one location at our fingertips. I see a few folks in the chat who have either read the book or who are about to go out and buy the book. Please do. We might even, who knows, might even have a study group, book reading club here on Black Liberation Media. That's not, what's the word? That's uncommon. It's not rare. We do go over books here, here on Black Liberation Media. I haven't done it yet on Rootwork, but soon come. So again, we've been here less than 1 hour. I try not to ramble on and on and on. It was a pre-record. I don't know if anybody has any questions for me, but if you have any comments that you would like me to share on screen, knock yourself out. Other than that, um, I'm not going to hold y'all. We definitely need to do a study group on this book. There have been study groups on Safia Bukhari, of course, on Asada Shakur, and now we've got this book on Queen Mother Moore. Who was I talking to the other day? Oh, I was on a show the other day, and the brother was asking about my books. Some of Us Are Brave. This is not a shameless plug, but you can see it that way. These books that, based on interviews I've done with sisters over the years, there's a quote from Anna Julia Cooper. I don't have the exact quote in front of me now, but she talks about the fact that, I'm paraphrasing, when you only have one side of the story, you're missing half of the story. It is of paramount importance that we know, listen to Black women's stories. It don't matter if it's Asada Shakur or Linda Brent, incidents in the life of a slave girl, right? Even Phyllis Wheatley can teach us certain things. So the experiences of Black women, our experiences, our thoughts, our desires, all of these things are important. And when it comes to Black women and the Black liberation movement, again, we're in a good place now because so many sisters have come forward to tell their stories. But for a minute there, we sisters was lost in the sauce. We didn't know where we was, right? Thorough study of Queen Mother Moore is long overdue. I don't know if anybody gonna top this. They might. When it comes to knowledge and information, constantly reevaluating, etc. Somebody might do something in the future, but right now this is what we got, and we should be grateful for it because, again, Ashley Farmer was able to take pieces from so many areas and put them together coherently in one spot to tell the story not only of Queen Mother Moore, but of the time in which she lived, the movements and organizations she was a part of. I don't think I got to meet Queen Mother Moore. I'm quite sure I would remember if I met Queen Mother Moore. No, I did not get to meet Queen Mother Moore. Interestingly enough, though, how I started today's show, I got to meet Imam Jamil Alameen, H. Rap Brown. I got to meet Malcolm X's sister, Ella Collins. Zen, I don't know if you probably weren't at Howard then, but both of them came to an African Liberation Day at Malcolm X Park. And I don't even know how I got hooked in. I'm finding myself walking with a group of folks down to the Howard Inn, and we knock on the door. Imam Jamil is coming out, and we go in, and Ella Collins is sitting in the room. So we go in there and talk. That was wow. Okay. So yeah, these are historical figures, but they're also just regular people. And if you get to meet and talk with regular people, you should take you should take that opportunity. Sit at their feet, most definitely. Learn what you can. Soak it up. And because, again, your stories, let's say you're not an activist, let's say you're not well known, but you have a memory of a time that you sat down next to such and such and talked with them, right? That adds to the story, that adds to the archive. Those nuances add to all that we have to know about the person. Okay, we got some folks. Well, and that's the other thing too. A lot of people are accessible. She's just walking around Philadelphia. You know who she is because she got the big old gele on, wearing African clothes. A lot of folks are accessible. And even Imam Jamil, peace be upon him, folks could write him and he would write you back. A lot of folks that we have access to. A lot of folks we should take advantage of the opportunity to get to know some of these people for our own edification and for posterity. So even though Mr. Arthritis, he ain't been knocking on the door lately at all. I'm not sure what that's about. But he ain't knocking on the door. But I'm going to stop rambling and get off of here and let y'all enjoy the rest of your evening. Shout out to Renee Johnston for helping me with the tech earlier. Shout out to Haki Kweli Shakur for use of that clip of Queen Mother Moore. Shout out to Dr. Ashley Farmer. Shout out to Queen Mother Moore, of course. Peace be upon the spirit of Imam Jamil Alameen. Don't forget to tune in to the Remix Morning Show the rest of this week. In the mornings, I might even show a pop-up one day. I don't know yet because I'm so hurt behind the passing of Imam Jamil Alameen. We need to know who this brother is. We need to know why he was important. We need to know what he represents. So yeah, shout out to Black Liberation Media. If you haven't already shared links, subscribed, and checked out the other programming that is here on Black Liberation Media, please do so. Please share it with other people. Please talk about the shows with other people. Please share my links. Talk about my shows to other people. Please hit that Cash App and that Venmo. Please hit the Patreon of Black Liberation Media. The information, somebody said that they didn't get this information in school. You wasn't gonna get it in school, and you almost didn't get it on YouTube because they want to try and kick us out of here. In order to sustain Black Liberation Media, we need you all to be generous when you are able to. So holla at the Patreon, all right? What you mean show up? You talking about me? You talking about everybody else? I'm gonna set my alarm. We're gonna see what happens. Anyway, appreciate y'all. My name is Tonda Cesare Shimaringa, and you have been tuned into Root Work here on Black Liberation Media. So again, thank you so much for hanging out with me this afternoon, this evening. You all take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.